The Oscars just made some major rule changes that mean you could be seeing more of your favorite actors in the near future, and I'll tell you how right now. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with a breakdown of some major changes that the Academy Awards made to their official rules late last week. Now, the Oscars change their rules every single year. Sometimes they're big changes like establishing a new category. Sometimes they're smaller procedural changes. And on paper, these changes look like they might be more procedural than big. But what these actually do is overhaul how two major categories work and how they have worked for decades. So let's go over the first two big changes first, and I'll talk about some of the smaller changes in a second. But the first big change I want to talk about comes in the acting categories: lead actor and actress and best supporting actor and actress. Now, in the modern history of the Academy, the acting categories have worked pretty much the same way. You can be nominated for, let's say, best actor and best supporting actor in the same year, but you can't have two performances nominated in either one of those categories. So if you put in two outstanding lead performances in one year, only one of those can be nominated for the Academy Award. And the way that that's worked is that, let's say they tabulate the results for Best Actor when it comes time for nominations, and you have two performances because you're an amazing actor that's among the top 5 vote getters for Best Actor. Well, because of Academy rules prior to the changes that were made last week, the votes would be thrown out for whichever performance had the lower number of votes, and then essentially the 6th place performance would be elevated up into one of the top 5 and would get nominated for the Oscars. But that rule is no more. They didn't change it. They threw it out altogether. So now an actor or actress can be nominated twice in the same acting category in the same year. And what this potentially solves is what many people have labeled the Kate Winslet problem. And that goes back to the Oscars, which were held in 2009, the year that Kate Winslet put in 2 acclaimed performances in the movies The Reader and Revolutionary Road. She had not yet won an Oscar. Many people thought that this was the year for her to win at the Academy Awards, and she ended up being nominated for Best Lead Actress and winning at the Academy Awards for The Reader. But her performance in that movie was a borderline supporting performance. Even though she was a main character, she was only in about a third of the film. But for whatever reason, the Academy Awards decided that this was the stronger performance and gave her the better shot at winning. But her Oscar campaign was angling for a double nomination. She was put up for consideration for Best Lead Actress in Revolutionary Road and Best Supporting Actress in The Reader. And that's because everybody knew that the rules stated she could only be nominated in each category one time. But remember that for your consideration is not binding at the Oscars. You can say you want to be considered for supporting actress, but if the Academy decides that they want to put you in the lead category, well, they can do that. And that's exactly what happened to Kate Winslet. And that award season was just messy. Kate Winslet won the SAG Award for Best Supporting Actress for The Reader. SAG nominated her for Best Lead Actress for Revolutionary Road, but she lost that award to Meryl Streep. At the BAFTAs, she was nominated for Best Lead Actress for both movies and won for The Reader. And at the Golden Globes, she won both awards. She won Best Lead Actress for Revolutionary Road and Best Supporting Actress for The Reader. It was obvious that the Academy wanted to give Kate Winslet the Academy Award for Lead Actress, and given that The Reader was a borderline performance, they decided that it was a lead performance. Now, in all likelihood, Winslet's performance in Revolutionary Road that year was probably also a top 5 vote getter, but had the lower number of votes, so that nomination did not count. That situation will no longer exist. If we were to rewind the clock to the 2009 Oscars, Kate Winslet would likely have been nominated twice for Best Actress, once for Revolutionary Road, once for The Reader. Now, this does open up the possibility that she would have split votes between those two performances and not won at all, but that's a discussion for a different day. So let's go to some cases where this rule change might have been relevant. For example, in 2024, Timothée Chalamet didn't really get a big push for Dune Part 2 because it was pretty much a given that A Complete Unknown would be his big Oscar movie. So when Warner Brothers was campaigning for Dune, they were pretty much pushing for Best Director, for the technical categories. Chalamet was eligible for Best Actor, but I think under these rules, Warner Brothers might have campaigned much more aggressively to get Timothée Chalamet that Best Actor nomination because he could also be nominated for A Complete Unknown. At the 1999 Oscars for movies that were released in 1998, 1998. Jeffrey Rush, I think, could very well have been nominated twice for Best Supporting Actor, once for Shakespeare in Love, which he was nominated for, and again for Elizabeth, which was a multi-Oscar nominated movie. And let's go back to one of the biggest Academy controversies of all time, the race back in 1967, where Sidney Poitier was not nominated for some of his best performances in The Heat of the Night, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and To Sir with Love. All three of those movies came out in the same year, and it's likely that because voters knew that only one of them could be nominated, they split their vote three ways, and Sidney Poitier was not nominated for any of those movies, even though his fellow cast members were nominated by and large for those movies. Under these new guidelines, Sidney Poitier could be nominated more than once, and it's likely that many voters would have nominated him more than once for Best Actor, and perhaps he could have been nominated 2 or maybe even 3 times in that category. So even though it does open up the concept of vote splitting for the same person in the same category, I think it also opens up avenues for some actors to be nominated either more than they would have been nominated or being nominated where they wouldn't have even been nominated at all. So that's a big change to the acting categories. Let's talk about the other major change that the Academy made to the rules, and that is in the Best International Film category, formerly known as the Best Foreign Language Film category. Now, the way that the Best International Film category worked, again, at least in the modern era, is that every country put together a panel or a jury of some sort to select one official nominee from that country, which would be submitted for Best International Film, and no other films from that country could be considered. Now, that system is still in place. Every country will still have a panel that gets together to select one official nominee per country, but a handful of additional films may now potentially be eligible every single year because the Academy opened up eligibility to select award winners from select film festivals. Under the new Academy rules, if a film wins the Golden Bear for Best Film at the Berlin International Film Festival, the Poussin Award for Best Film at the Poussin International Film Festival, the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, the World Cinema Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, the Platform Award at the Toronto International Film Festival, or the Golden Lion, which is the top award at the Venice International Film Festival, that film will also now be eligible to be nominated for Best International Feature at the Oscars. Now, understandably, not everybody, including myself, has an exhaustive knowledge or recall of which movies won those awards. So let's apply these new metrics to some movies that were left out of the Best International Film race in recent years to see what would have made the cut and what would still have been left out. Anatomy of a Fall is the most prominent recent example. It was not chosen by France, inexplicably, as their selection for Best International Film. So despite being nominated for and winning Oscars in other categories, it was not eligible for Best International Film. However, because it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, it would have been eligible for Best International Feature under the new rules. It absolutely would have been nominated, and it very possibly could have won the Academy Award over The Zone of Interest, which did win the Oscar. That would have been a great race between those two movies. RRR, however, which was not selected by India as the country's official nominee for Best International Film, it was nominated for Best Original Song and won the Oscar. It still would not have been eligible in the international film race because it did not win any of the qualifying awards at those international festivals. The same goes for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which was not chosen by France as the country's official nominee. It also would not have been eligible because even though it did play at Cannes, it did not receive the Palme d'Or. Some notable films from the past that would have been eligible but weren't nominated for Best International Film include Dupin from France, which won the Palme d'Or in 2015. It was a highly acclaimed film but was not chosen by France as the country's official nominee. Happening is another French film which won the Golden Lion back in 2021. France chose Titan, which was the Palme d'Or winner, over Happening. Titan wasn't even nominated. However, Happening could have been nominated under the new system. And Spirited Away could have been nominated for Best International Film, or I believe at that time it was Best Foreign Language Film, because it won the Golden Bear at Berlin. Japan did not select Spirited Away as their official nominee for Best International Film. However, it did win Best Animated Film, and I think could very likely have been nominated in the other category as well. And when it comes to overhauling the Best International Film category, I think that this is a good start, but I think it should be the first step in a process because it does open the door up to some worthy movies that are left out due to oftentimes politics in their home countries as far as why a movie is or isn't chosen. But I think that it still leaves some great movies like RRR and Portrait of a Lady on Fire out in the cold. However, you also have to consider the fact that this is kind of a jury award when it comes to making the short list. All Academy members are eligible, but if you volunteer to be a nominating committee member or whatever for Best International Feature, you have to watch a minimum number of submissions. That's how they get down to the short list from which the final nominees are chosen. And if you throw that door open to too many movies, then that whole jury system, shortlist system is kind of undermined because no one will be able to watch as many movies as they need to in order to make an informed decision. It is a difficult category to parse as far as how the rules should work in order to make sure that the most acclaimed and deserving films make it. But also, if you throw the door open to too many movies, then you could have some countries with multiple nominees every single year that shut out other great movies from around the world and really decrease the diversity of different countries around the world that are nominated. So there's no perfect solution. This is a good start, but I think that there's a long way still to go. However, there is another major change in the Best International Film category that I am 100% behind, and it also shakes up the way that the award has worked pretty much since its inception. I've talked about this on my Oscar coverage in the past, but when a film is nominated for Best International Feature, the country is listed as the nominee. So, for example, South Korea is listed as the nominee for Parasite, and when it won Best International Feature Film, South Korea won the award. Bong Joon-ho accepted it on behalf of South Korea, but the winner officially in the Academy record books is the country. That is now a thing of the past. As of next year's Academy Awards, the director of the film will be the listed nominee for the movie. The director will accept the award on behalf of the movie's crew and the creative team behind the movie, and the director of the film will be the person listed on the trophy plaque. So basically, it goes from the country winning the award to the director of the film winning the award, and I'm in favor of this. I understand that you want to recognize the achievement of specific countries, but it is the director and the director's team that ultimately made the movie, and what it also does is shake up the statistics as far as who wins the Academy Award. Again, going back to some recent cases, Bong Joon-ho would have won 4 Oscars for Parasite instead of 3 had he been listed as the winner for the award. Ang Lee would have won his first Oscar for directing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 5 years before he won his eventual first personal Oscar for directing Brokeback Mountain. Asghar Farhadi has never won a competitive Oscar. He would now have 2 Academy Awards of his own instead of winning 2 for his country of Iran. And Pedro Almodovar would have won 3 years before his eventual Best Screenplay win for Talk to Her. There are also some titans of filmmaking around the world who never won a competitive Academy Award that under these new rules would have had an Oscar officially to their name. Ingmar Bergman never won a competitive Academy Award. He would have 3 Oscars for Best Foreign Language Film. Akira Kurosawa never won a competitive Oscar. He would have 2 Academy Awards to his name. Federico Fellini never won an Oscar. He would have 4 Academy Awards. Francois Truffaut would have an Oscar win to his name instead of under France's name. Vittorio De Sica, who made some of the landmark films in film history, would have 4 Academy Awards for Best Foreign Language Film. And Jacques Tati, who has influenced so many modern filmmakers, would have 1 Academy Award to his name. Now, these rule changes are not retroactive, so all of these great directors are not all of a sudden going to have Oscars put on their record, but I think what this does is to ensure that the next Kurosawa or the next Jacques Tati or Fellini will have those Oscars on their record for the work that they deserve to win Academy Awards for. I get giving it to the country. I think this is a better system, and I am very happy with this change. There were also some other less groundbreaking changes that were made to the official Oscar rules. In the casting category, the number of statuettes awarded increased from a maximum of 2 to a maximum of 3 statuettes. So now 3 people potentially from the casting team of a movie can win Academy Awards. In the cinematography category, the short list of films was expanded to a guaranteed number of 20 instead of a floating number of 10 to 20 every year. In the original song category, and this is kind of interesting, for a song that is used over the end credits of the movie, the submitted materials now also have to include the 15 seconds preceding the end credits. And this is a really interesting change for me because it's basically the Academy saying they want some context for movies that are put on the end credits. Is it woven into the fabric of the end of a movie, or are you just sticking a song at the end of the credits in an attempt to win an Oscar, Diane Warren? I don't know if this is really going to change anything in the Best Original Song category, but it seems like there might be some desire in the Academy to maybe close that loophole where you can put a completely unrelated song over the credits and expect the Oscar nomination. In the visual effects category, all voting members now have to view a 3-minute before and after reel for each visual effects nominee, which are made for the bake-off, or basically the presentation to decide what movies are going to be on the short list. If you've ever seen these things, and they do great on social media, where they will show the raw footage from a movie and you'll see all of the blue screen or the green screen or no screen if it's a completely digital effect, and then you'll see all of the elements laid in individually, where they composited the T-Rex. Oh, that water was fake. Oh, that entire city was fake. These have always been required videos from the visual effects houses when the nominating committee is putting together its short list so that they can see all of the work. Now, voting Academy members also have to watch these videos so they can maybe appreciate subtle visual effects that they didn't even realize are visual effects, or maybe just kind of marvel at bigger effects and notice that they're more complicated than anybody knew they were. How they're going to enforce this must-watch rule, nobody really knows, but I'm glad that they're at least putting it down there, that you can't just vote because you saw a movie in theaters and didn't really look into the visual effects at all. Now you have to at least do a tiny bit of research. In the writing and acting categories, there are now official rules that codify that screenplays and performances have to be human authored to be eligible. So basically a ban on AI-generated performances and a ban on AI-generated scripts. For the Governor's Awards, which are basically the honorary Academy Awards, it's now in the rules that 3 separate disciplines must be honored every year. So basically it's an attempt to make sure that they're not just giving it to 3 actors or 2 actors and 1 director every year, to spread the love to production designers and visual effects artists and people that work in other parts other than the most quote-unquote famous parts of the film industry. And the Academy also reserved their rights to inquire for more information regarding AI use and authorship, which is basically the Academy saying, hey, if you used AI in writing or acting, which is explicitly banned, or if we think you used it more heavily in other categories where some AI usage may be accepted, we have every right to investigate, to come to you, to ask, and to find out more information. And I think this is another good guardrail when it comes to the use of AI in movies that are considered at the Oscars. So those are the rule changes, major and minor, that the Academy has put in place starting at next year's Academy Awards. What do you think? What do you think about the potential of an actor being nominated twice in the same category in one year? What do you think of the changes made to the international feature category? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you're not subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Tomorrow, I will have my box office show, Charts with Dan. Later this week, I'll have a review of Mortal Kombat 2, plus anything else that might pop up, like the Academy making major rule changes. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.